Dear students, welcome to the online session of Medium, Small and Micro Enterprise Management of 3rd BBA 6th semester. Now we are in part 1 of Unit 5. What are the important contents to be covered in this session? Ancillary industries, rural industries and artisans. These are the important concepts to be covered in this session. Ancillary industry. First, let us look at what is an ancillary industry as per the literature available. Ancillary industry is an industrial undertaking which is engaged or is proposed to be engaged in the manufacture or production of parts, components, sub-assemblies, tooling or intermediates, or the rendering of services, and the undertaking supplies or renders or proposes to supply or render not less than 50% of its production. What does it mean? An ancillary industry is not end product manufacturer. Ancillary industries supply certain components to mainstream industries. Let us take an example of automobile industry. What are the average components which are there in car? If you want to manufacture a car, how many components are required down to the screws and nuts? There are 30,000 components are required to manufacture a car. All these 30,000 components cannot be manufactured by a company, core company, whether it is a Tata or whether it is a Maruti or any other company. It cannot manufacture all these 30,000 components. Certain components are made in-house and some other components are supplied by external parties. These supporting entities are called as ancillary industries. So that is a basic definition of ancillary industry. Now, these are industrial undertakings having fixed investment in plant and machinery not exceeding 1 crore, engaged in or proposed to engage in the manufacture of parts, components, sub-assemblies, tooling or intermediaries. This is there in the first slide also. The rendering of services supplying 30% of their production or services as the case may be, or other units for production of other articles. If it is a manufacturing company, 50% of the components must be supporting components to be supplied to some other parties. If it is a service company, 30%, minimum 30% of the production should be supplied to various companies. What are the strategies for ancillary industrial development? Why this ancillary industry is plays very important role in MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises. So when we look at these points, we will have a clear idea why ancillary industries are required hugely in MSME sector. First one is development of employment opportunities coupled with growth of entrepreneurship in different fields. Generally they are small in size, so number of units are required to support large industries. They are labor intensive units, they need less capital, so obviously entrepreneurship would be developed in one hand and employment generation is possible on the other hand. Second point is disposal of industrial activities in various regions. Number of industries in various regions are required to utilize local resources. So by that way, industrial growth is possible in various corners of the country. The third one is increases in productivity of MSMEs. Obviously, when there are number of units and the demand for each unit is huge, obviously productivity levels will be increased. Fourth one is growth of a low cost economy through reduction in cost. The size is small, hierarchy levels are small, cost of production would be small, scale of economies is possible through cost reduction techniques followed by the small units. And next one is development of a single or multidiscipline expertise in different fields to bring about economies of scale. So one company is completely focused on one particular component, it will get expertise in that, so that cost reduction and scale of economies is possible through a huge production of only single unit or a limited number of components. Next, effective solution for marketing problems of MSMEs. Once these micro, small and medium enterprises are attached to the large scale industries as ancillary units, most of the marketing problems will be solved, so to sell their products and services. Now, what are the advantages to large units? It's more convenience for large scale units to get the ancillary units to produce products for them. If we are going to manufacture a car, let us assume, and there are various components required as we discussed in the previous slides. There are electric switches are required, glass components are required, tires are required, battery is required, so various tech components are required, infotainment system is required. So let us assume tires. Some MRF or CEAT or TVS or some other company, JK, are experts in manufacturing of tires. If the company wants to, let us assume Hyundai or Maruti wants to set up its own tire unit, its objective may be diversified to certain extent, and it cannot focus completely on the manufacturing of or development of new engines for cars. So their focus will be diverted to certain extent to manufacture these components. So what they want to do is they want to focus on core objectives of the company, and remaining things will be looked after by some other firms. So it is more convenience to large industries to outsource certain components to be produced by these ancillary units. Second point is complexity of management can be reduced by ancillarization. There will be simple concepts because all components cannot be manufactured by a single firm. So through outsourcing, through encouraging ancillary units, complexity levels will be decreased for large MNCs, multinational companies. Third one is large enterprise can economize transportation cost and storage cost. If they want to produce every component by themselves, it requires huge go downs, labor and whatever manufacturing facilities are required. So they can, by engaging through these micro, small and medium enterprise ancillary units, they can save or economize transportation and storage costs also. By entering into long term contracts, large enterprises can overcome risk price fluctuations in raw materials. So raw materials may fluctuate, prices of raw material may fluctuate very frequently. By entering into long term contracts with ancillary units, they can stabilize the prices of raw materials so that economies is possible or cost reduction is possible. So this is briefly about ancillarization. Now let us look at rural industries and artisans. Rural industries embrace all industries which are run by rural people in rural areas. These industries are based primarily on the utilization of locally available raw materials, skills and small amount of capital. The Ministry of Agro and Rural Industries in India was established in September 2001 with the aim to develop the rural industries in the Indian economy. The main objective of these initiatives were to ameliorate the supply chain management, upgrade skills, introduce innovative technologies and expand markets of the entrepreneurs and artisans. A wide range of programs, schemes, projects and policies have been formulated to carry out various activities in the rural sector in India. Also, the Government of India has ensured employment generation program in the rural region under a Rural Employment Generation Program REGP and the Prime Minister's Rozgar Yojana in association with the state governments, Reserve Bank of India and other banks. So this is basically about rural industries. Any industry which is started in rural area by rural people can be called as rural industry. What are the major sectors in rural economy? First one is rubber business. There is no order at all. These are the few important sectors dominated by rural economy. Rubber business can be found in some parts of Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Fisheries. Fisheries is found in coastal belt of all the states. And third one is poultry. Generally we can found poultry in rural areas. And fourth one is tobacco. Fifth one is jute and jute mills. Next one is horticulture. Next one is sericulture. Sericulture includes manufacturing of silk, hand woven items and other handicraft textile products. Next, tea. Generally tea estates are found in backward areas, hilly areas where tea estates are formed as terrace farming. Now let us look at what is rural artisans. A skilled worker who has practices some trade or handicraft. An artisan is a skilled manual worker who crafts items that may be functional, strictly decorative, includes furniture, clothing, jewelry, household items and tools. The RBI deducted certain ingredients to consider a person as an artisan depending upon his profession in which he is mainly engaged. The following occupations make it very clear. So what are those occupations? First one is weavers, knitters, etc. will come under this artisan section. Second one is shoemakers and other leather workers also come in this category. Dressmakers, blacksmith, goldsmith and other metal workers, carpenters, painters, etc. Stone carvers, bricklayers, plaster cement finishers, etc. Printer, engravers, blockmakers, etc. Potters, glass and ceramic workers, etc. Makers of musical instruments, toys, sports goods, etc. Basket and mat weaver relating workers. All these categories come under rural artisans. What are the problems faced by rural artisans? Generally, most of the rural artisans are from very backward area. So, illiteracy of artisans is the main drawback or problem we can found in many artisan families. Second one is non-availability of raw material. Generally, raw materials in this categories are seasonal. So, they may be available for few months in a year. So, non-availability or supply of raw materials would be again a kind of problem for rural artisans. Third one is income level in rural artisans. In rural areas, there will not be such demand for these products, huge demand for these products, and so the pricing would be very less, so that income levels of rural artisans would be miserable. And next one is use of old and obsolete equipments. Most of the artisans are follow their legacy or tradition of manufacturing certain or making certain products. So, obsolescence of technology is one kind of problem for rural artisans. And next one is lack of financial assistance. So, if they want to prosper their business, if they want to enhance their business, they do not have sufficient financial assistance through formal channels. That is another problem. And seasonal demand of their products. So, again, for each category of product there is a seasonal demand in season and unseason. In unseason time, obviously they will become a daily labor in some other areas, because for their basic livelihood it is very much required. So, seasonal demand for these products would be another problem. And no means of transportation and commercialization. If they want to sell their product somewhere else, the choice is limited with respect to transportation and logistics. So, this again they are dependent on some middleman. They need to pay some margins for them, and they cannot make out huge potential or demand available for the products or services. This is another kind of drawback. And next, shift of rural customers towards the industrial products. Even most of the rural customers are looking at industrial products, which means they are looking at alternatives to these traditional products. So it reduces the demand for rural products. And lengthy production time, it requires huge time to produce products by using traditional methods. No regular work to artisans, as we mentioned, in the unseasoned time there is no season. They go for daily labor work in agri fields and etc. So momentum will be missed out to manufacture products continuously because of these seasonal effects, and very less wages to artisans obviously. So the wages or payment for these artisans would be less when compared to regular workers. Poor workplace conditions of artisans. Most of these units are small in size, so they have limited resources or infrastructure available for workers. Most of the artisans work in poor working conditions. Lack of awareness about market. There may be huge demand for the products, but the right channel cannot be identified by these illiterate backward artisans. That is another kind of problem. And next one is lack of financial resources. As we discussed earlier, formal financial channels are not available to poor artisans. That is another problem. Now let us discuss about cottage industry. What is cottage industry? Cottage industry is a traditional industry catering mainly to the local population and dependent upon local raw materials. They are located usually at the homes of the producers, hence the name cottage industry. Cottage means a small hut or small place. There is no separate production unit. Generally these are home based units. That's why the name itself also given as cottage industries. So what is the importance of cottage industries? As rural industries, cottage industries also require less capital investment, and these are labor intensive units. There is less capital and more labor, so employment opportunities will be enhanced. So it leads to reduction of unemployment. Local resources will be utilized. Most of the cottage industries are based on local availability of local resources, and it contributes a sizable amount to industrial output. And contribution to exports is significant. As we discussed earlier, MSMEs contribute around more than 30% of the exports. Raw material cost is low because they are locally available material. It doesn't require any transportation logistics costs, so raw material cost would be less. Wide variety of products can be manufactured through these cottage industries. What are the promotional measures to cottage industries and rural industries taken by the government? First one is Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program. Second one is Scheme of Fund for Regeneration of Traditional Industries. Third one is a scheme for promoting innovation, rural industry and entrepreneurship. And fourth one is Market Promotional Development Assistance MPEDA. And fifth one is Interest Subsidy Eligibility Certificate. And sixth one is Workshed Scheme for Khadi Artisans. These are the important promotional measures taken by the government to cottage and rural industries. Let us discuss about each one in brief. So first one is Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program, in which investment subsidy will be provided to the entrepreneurs. General minimum investment subsidy would be 25%, 15% in case of general candidates male. For women there is 10% more subsidy, so 25%. If they belong to a certain special category or reservation, they can climb up to 40% subsidy on investment to capital. The limit is around 20 lakhs, I think the maximum limit. Scheme of Fund for Regeneration of Traditional Industries. Generally cottage and rural industries are based or work on traditional methods. If they want to acquire or get technological advancement, so they can purchase plant and machinery under these schemes. So technological advancement is possible and government is supporting through SFUTI. And a scheme for promoting innovation, rural industries and entrepreneurship. So tool rooms are possible through this training programs will be provided. Innovative funding will be provided for innovative ideas in rural areas or rural industries. Next one is market promotion development assistance. Exhibitions will be conducted, sales promotional activities will be conducted by the government. So to promote rural artisans or rural industries or cottage industries. Interest subsidy eligibility certificate, in which the entrepreneur can get funds for minimum as 4% interest. Remaining interest portion would be borne by government to promote entrepreneurship in rural areas. Workshed scheme for Khadi artisans. This is especially meant for Khadi artisans. These are few important schemes or programs initiated by Government of India to support cottage and rural industries. This is briefly about ancillary industry, rural industries and artisans. Thank you very much for your patience listening. A remaining part will be discussed in part 2 of unit 5 of medium, small and micro enterprise management. Thank you so much.